All right, today we're going to jump into one of the most important building blocks in all of Arabic grammar. It's called the Murakkab-e-Izafi, which is really just a fancy way of saying the possessive phrase. Now, it might look a little intimidating at first, but trust me, the rules are incredibly simple. And once you get them down, you're going to start seeing the structure absolutely everywhere, unlocking a much, much deeper understanding of the language.
So, let's kick things off with a little puzzle. In Urdu, a lot of us know the phrase Allah ki kitab, which means Allah's book. But how do you say that exact same thing in Arabic? Just take a second and think about it.
And here it is, Kitabullahi. Now, the first thing that probably jumps out at you is that the words are flipped. In Arabic, it's Book of Allah, not Allah's book. And if you look really close, what's going on with those vowel endings? That U on kitab and the E on Allah, why are those there? Well, that why is exactly what we're about to unpack.
To really understand this whole thing, you just need to meet the two key players in every single possessive phrase. Think of them like a dynamic duo, a team that always works together to show who owns what.
First up, we've got the mudaf. This is always the first word in the phrase, and it's simply the thing that's being owned, the thing that's possessed. So in our example, kitabu, the book itself, that's our mudaf.
And its partner in crime is the Mudaf Ilaih. This is the second word, and it's the owner, the possessor. So in Kitabu Allahi, the word Allahi is the Mudaf Ilaih. So the pattern is always the same, the thing being owned followed by the owner.
Okay, now for the most important part. How do you actually spot one of these phrases out in the wild? Well, it all comes down to 3 golden rules. This is your foolproof checklist, your secret decoder for finding them.
The first 2 rules are all about that first word, the mudaf. Rule 1, it can never, and I mean never, have al in front of it. And rule 2, it can never have tanween. You know, those double vowel markings? It only ever gets a single vowel. These 2 are absolute, non-negotiable deal breakers.
Now for the second word, the Mudaf Ilaih. This one's even easier. It has just one job, one single rule to follow. It must always be in the genitive case, or what's called jar. And you'll usually spot this because of the kasra, which gives it that I sound at the end.
So it all boils down to this really simple 3-point checklist. When you see 2 nouns next to each other, you just ask yourself, is the first one missing al? Yep. Is it missing tanween? Yep. And is the second one in the genitive case? Yep. If you can tick all 3 of those boxes, boom, you have definitely found a Murakkab-e-Izafi.
All right, enough with the theory, right? The best way to really get this stuff is to see it in action. So let's take our new 3-point checklist and apply it to a couple of real-world examples.
Let's go right back to our original puzzle, Kitabullahi. Now we actually have the tools we need to analyze it like a pro.
Okay, let's run it through the checklist. Does kitabu have al? No. Does it have tanween? Nope, just a single dhamma. Is Allahi in the genitive case? Yes, you can see that kasra right at the end. That's 3 for 3, a perfect Murakkab-e-Izafi.
Let's try another one you'll hear all the time. Babu masjidi. This just means the door of the mosque.
Let's run the rules again, quick this time. For babu, no al check, no tanween check, and for al-masjidi, it's in the genitive case with that kasra at the end, check. Perfect. You see, once you've done this a few times, it just becomes second nature.
Okay, so we're getting pretty good at spotting these phrases. But how does this whole 2-word unit actually behave inside a larger sentence? To figure that out, we need to look at 2 more crucial ideas: definiteness and grammatical case.
So first, how do you know if the phrase means the book of the boy versus a book of a boy? The rule is super simple. It all comes down to the second word, the Mudaf Ilaih. It's the boss. If the Mudaf Ilaih is definite, the whole phrase becomes definite. If it's indefinite, the whole phrase becomes indefinite. The second word is completely in control here.
So what about the grammatical case of the entire phrase? Well, this time, the first word, the mudaf, gets to be in charge. The case of the whole compound just follows whatever job the mudaf is doing in the sentence. If it's the subject, it's nominative. If it's the object, it's accusative. And all the while, the Mudaf Ilaih doesn't care. It stays locked in its own genitive case no matter what.
I know we've gone through a lot of grammar rules, but you might be thinking, so what? Why does any of this really matter? What's the real payoff for learning all this?
Here's why it matters. This is not just some abstract grammar exercise. The Murakkab-e-Izafi is one of the most common structures in the Quran and in all of classical Arabic. Being able to recognize it instantly clarifies the relationship between words. It prevents you from making mistakes in translation, and it opens up a whole deeper layer of meaning. It really is a master key.
If you forget everything else from this whole explainer, I want you to remember just one thing, one number, 3.
Because everything, and I mean everything, boils down to those 3 golden rules. First word, no al. First word, no tanween. And the second word, always in the genitive case. If you can commit that to memory, I promise you, you'll be able to spot this structure anywhere you look. So I'll leave you with this final thought. Take a look at this phrase from the Quran, Alimu al-ghaybi wa-shahada. Before today, this might have just looked like a list of words, but now that you have the key, you can see it's a relationship. Alimu, the knower, is the mudaf, and al-ghaybi wa-shahada is the Mudaf Ilaih. So the phrase means the knower of the unseen and the witnessed. With this key, what other meanings are just waiting for you to unlock?